Good morning, everybody, and good evening to the ones that are on the other side of the world. My name is Patricia Kayaga, a Master's of Art and Sustainable Leisure Management student at Vancouver Island University. And I'm here today to present the topic of managing destination narratives in a pandemic, comparing the social media post of Kenyan and Tanzania Tourism Board. I would like to acknowledge the lands that are the indigenous lands of which I reside in. To start with, the global travel and tourism are vulnerable to major shocks that have impacts on both economic value of the industry, but also on how potential visitors tend to view the destination country or the host countries. These types of shock can be divided mainly on two sides, constituting of natural and man-made disasters. Things like the terror attack of September 11 costed tourist arrivals in neighboring countries, but also in other destination countries. An Indian Oceanic tsunami resulted into humanitarian trolls, economic trolls, and environmental medical threats. An Ebola outbreak in West Africa in 2014-2016 impacted all travel in Africa due to the miscommunication of Africa being one country, sadly affecting the entire continent. East Africa is particularly vulnerable to shock that results in the issuing of travel restriction from the source countries and termination of flights to the affected area. This can be compounded in countries like Tanzania and Kenya, where there is a limited domestic travel market with the high dependence on international market when it comes to tourism. This vulnerability became more evident in East Africa tourism industry during the devastating COVID-19 global pandemic. Literature suggests that destination narratives can be defined or they can be made through the understanding of marketing and consumption processes in general, where a narrative to be created is a combination of telling stories that distinguishes a destination from each other in terms of product and experiences offered in attempt to attract market to those destinations. Digital marketing through social media channels is commonly used strategy for sharing information, where various DMOs have used this as an opportunity for marketing and promotion of destination, which is now an ubiquitous activity aided by the rise of new technological innovation, which includes these social medias. Destinations can now actively create content for diverse audiences to market the different experiences that they offer. To do this, destination weave imageries and messagings into narratively, mostly done via social media, that contributes to building of a positive destination image. However, not all destinations have harnessed the opportunity for social media, have harnessed the opportunity that social media provides in the same degree. But when we look at crisis and the increase in shocks, this calls for crisis communication, which is usually employed when severe pressure falls upon organization and limits their ability to deliver products and services and consumers' ability to enjoy those products and services offered by destinations. An important factor in crisis communication is that crises have distinct phases that require different messaging. That's why we're going to use the crisis management model suggested by González Herrero and Part in 1996, which has 4 distinct stages that can be used in the management of a crisis in a destination. Conclusively, we can say that DMOs have a very integral role in the connecting of supply and demand aspects of tourism, while also ensuring the effectiveness of the use of destination resources and managing the visitor satisfaction in their destination. Literature reviews suggest that not all destinations will approach the same crisis in the same way. Therefore, they move through the crisis management phases in different ways. Additionally, messages shared by these DMOs during the same period of time may differ based on the approach that the destination employs and the nature of the crisis that they're facing. This brings us to the purpose of our study, which is to compare the destination narratives created and managed by KTB and TTB during the 2.5 months prior to the pandemic and the 6.5 months of the COVID-19 pandemic, with the use of social media as the primary and immediate communication channel used during crisis. The research questions were what were the destination narratives created by KTB and TTB prior to the pandemic? How did the destination narrative evolve during the different first 6 months of the crisis, how the social media posts of Kenyan and Tanzanian national tourism authorities align with the 4 phases of the crisis management and communication. Research context. This study focused on the countries of Kenya and Tanzania, the 2 largest countries and economies in East Africa. The tourism industry in these destinations is formed around the same tourism product, focusing on wildlife tourism and coastal tourism, even sharing the famous Serengeti ecosystem. However, the growth and evolution of tourism industry in this destination has been quite different. Literature suggests that the impact of colonization and the post-colonial attitude towards tourism have impacted the development of tourism in these countries. This is evidenced by the World Economic Forum of 2019 of tourism competitive ranking that indicated Kenya being the 82nd and Tanzania being the 95th in tourism competitive index in the world, and Kenya being the 5th in Africa and Tanzania being the 8th in Africa. However, we can say that some of the factors that contribute to the growth difference between the 2 destinations may include things like product diversification, standard of services, political stability, and infrastructure development. I am a proud Tanzanian and a Christian with very strong belief in my faith. So I bring this position to my research, and I also have a bachelor degree in wildlife management and tourism from the College of African Wildlife Management. And my passion about potentials for tourism to improve the lives of Tanzanians is very high. Methodology of our study. The study utilized content analysis approach to better understand the narratives shared by KTB and TTB during the pandemic. Content analysis was the appropriate choice to allow for inferences to be made from images and texts that were collected from the social medias. The scope of the study was limited to social media posts between December 2019 and September 2020, so as to cover the short pre-pandemic phase as well as the first 6 months of the pandemic. The data was collected from social media posts, included videos, images, and texts made by KTB and TTB via Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And Kenya had a total of 1,951 posts. However, Tanzania during the same period of time had a total number of 447 posts. Identical posts that were made on multiple platforms were only included once in the analysis process, and no reposts or celebratory posts like Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Independence Day were included in the analysis process. Images were collected using screen capture, and videos were downloaded and transcribed before being imported into NVivo 12. Images and videos were named based on sources and dates of posting. In the data analysis phase, analysis was conducted using a multi-stage coding process that was guided by the research questions, which focused on the destination narratives. The initial stage analysis included sorting of data into 4 temporal periods: the pre-pandemic, early days of the pandemic, preparing for reopening, and the reopening phase. The second stage of the analysis involved coding data into different categories, within each temporal period. And the final stage was to examine the different categories and identify themes that were found in each destination's social media posts. In the findings section, from the data that we collected, general data that we collected, and after sorting the data based on the marketing and promotional posts that were made by the 2 DMOs, Kenya had a total number of 869 posts, while Tanzania had a total number of 186 posts. The timelines that were used in the division of data, as indicated there, show that the pre-pandemic and the early days of the pandemic is the only times that both Kenya and Tanzania had the same timeline. That was from December 1st, 2019 to March 11th, 2020 in the pre-pandemic period, and 12th of March to 30th of March of 2020 for the early days of the pandemic. But from preparing for reopening and the reopening phase, the 2 destinations had distinct times of operation. Kenya, in the preparing for reopening, was from 1st of April to 30th of June, and the reopening phase happened from the 1st of July to 30th of September. While in Tanzania, the preparing for reopening was from 1st of April to 20th of May, and reopening phase was from 21st of May to 30th of September. The following were the findings of our data. In the pre-pandemic period, Kenya had a very specific narrative that focused on indicating that Kenya is a world-class destination for adventure and nature-based safari tourism, offering the highest quality of experience and unique value for every kind of visitor. And during this period, Kenya had a total number of 145 posts, while Tanzania's narrative was focused on indicating that Tanzania is a modern, legitimate, and well-developed player in the international tourism stage, who possesses a diverse mix of unique high-value offering and offers these products and services with the comfort of modern convenience. And during this period of time, Tanzania had a total number of 63 posts. The following are some of the images that were used in the creation of the narratives that were shared by both destinations. And during this period of time, both destinations were highly focused in the marketing and promoting of the destinations to the potential visitors or potential markets. In the early days of the pandemic, Kenya's narrative was focused on indicating that Kenya is a safe, caring, and responsible destination with many attractions to be excited about for the future visits. And Kenya had 37 posts within this period of time, while Tanzania's narrative was focused on indicating that Tanzania is responsible and acknowledges the limited travel, the call to safe tourism industry, as well as unique level of access in incompatible natural phenomena. In this period of time, Tanzania had a total number of 14 posts. The following videos indicate some of the data that was used to conclude or to create the narratives that were indicated by each DMO in the early days of the pandemic temporal period.
We are living in unprecedented times, in circumstances that see us staying at home, because this is the right thing to do now. But this dark cloud of uncertainty will pass, giving way to a new dawn when we get back to doing what we love, traveling the world, seeing new places, and making new memories. Magical Kenya will be waiting to embrace you with the hospitality of its people. Be ready for an adventure of a lifetime. We will be here for you to live the magic. Magical Kenya, the magic awaits.
In the preparing for reopening period, Kenya had a narrative that was focused on indicating how the relevance of tourism to everybody and the pride of the country has in its industry and hope to retain its future. And during this period of time, Kenya had a total number of 307 posts. However, Tanzania's narrative was that indicated country's awareness of the richness it possesses, bound by external restriction and urgently awaiting the return of tourism, the key economic driver. And Tanzania had a total number of 25 posts. In the preparing for reopening phase, this is where the two destinations started having two different timelines, and even the way they approached the situation was different. Kenya had a different approach where it's indicated that they also helped and supported the local communities in different ways, as indicated in the top left corner of the post, which reads as a tremendous thank you to the tourism and hospitality industry for coming together and showing its unequivocal support in the fighting against the COVID-19 in Kenya through donations. Together we'll defeat coronavirus. However, in Tanzania, it still indicated that they were aware and acknowledged the presence of the pandemic, but the difference in the post is shown that in the Tanzanian post, less PPE observation was made, while in Kenyan posts, we can see that people still observed the proper PPE in order to ensure that everybody is safe. In the reopening phase, Kenya's narrative was running call for citizens to support rebirth of tourism industry, citing its importance, relevance, and value to the country, while also announcing to the world that Kenya was open for business, offered a safe option for travel, and still held all the beauty and the magic it was known for. And Kenya had a total number of 380 posts. However, Tanzania's narrative was that the country is ready and safely welcomes tourism back into the country and offers incredible value to the tourists and visitors who travel there. Tanzanians should experience the great tourist offering, both to support the industry and to celebrate the great experience available at their doorsteps. And Tanzania had the total number of 84 posts. I would like to acknowledge that in this specific phase, Tanzania had the longest time compared to Kenya, and yet there's a high difference in the number of postings that each DMO had. The following videos are also part of the data that indicated or helped us in the formation of the narratives that both DMOs have.
Kenya welcomes you back. From 1st of August 2020, we are open to do business with you. Let's all observe the Ministry of Health protocols so that we can all be safe. The magic awaits you. Kenya hakuna matata.
Jambo, my name is Devota Mdachi. I'm the Managing Director of the Tanzania Tourist Board. Over the past few weeks, some countries have started to remove travel restrictions for their citizens to travel out of their countries, while others have opened up to allow tourists access to tourist attractions which were closed for quite some time. I am delighted to inform you that Tanzania has opened up its airspace and will be receiving international airlines and tourists from this month. Tourists arriving in Tanzania who are confirmed to be COVID-19 free will not be subjected to the 14 days quarantine, so they will be able to travel to their planned destinations on arrival. We wish to assure prospective tourists coming to Tanzania that measures are being put to place to see that they remain safe and healthy during and after their visit. Allow me to welcome you again to Tanzania. Come and see and experience a holiday of your lifetime. Tanzania, unforgettable.
Kenya welcomes you back.
This brings us to a discussion which will be divided into two. I will first talk of the managing destination narratives, then we'll focus on destination narrative and the crisis management. Starting with the management of destination narrative by KTB and TTB. Prior to the pandemic, KTB and TTB had similar narratives that wholly focused on the promotion of the destination, whereas KTB's narrative was focused on the beauty and the magic experience that they offer to visitors, which aligns with the global way of marketing tourism products, while TTB was focused on most popular tourism products, that is wildlife safaris in the northern circuits, tending to use the old way, which is product-based in the promotion of their destination. Despite the rising incidence of COVID-19 in other countries, neither destination attempted to change the narratives until it was necessary after the global shutdown of travel. During the pandemic, there was a distinct difference in approaches that were taken by KTB and TTB to the messaging related to the pandemic. TTB's approach during the pandemic was to acknowledge the temporary shutdown of global tourism due to the health and safety concerns. However, once they reopened their airports in mid-May, while most of the regional and global destinations remained closed, TTB largely ignored the pandemic. This was consistent with the message that was released by the national government under the leadership of the late President, Dr. John Pombe Magufuli, who insisted that Tanzania was a COVID-free due to the power of prayer. Contrasting approach taken by TTB, the KTB focused much of the social media on highlighting the pandemic-related health and hygiene protocol, while working to reassure the residents and the potential visitor that Kenya tourism operators were focused on safety. And KTB also worked to develop anticipation for the future travel that enabled them to win the acknowledgement of being one of the destinations that kept people of dreaming of travel even during the pandemic. A distinct difference between this post and the pre-pandemic post is that KTB initially acknowledged that it was not yet safe to travel. Once they began reopening the country to travel, KTB also took a phased approach using its social media to signal local reopening, then regional reopening, and finally the global reopening. A final distinction between the two countries was that KTB continued the narrative of being a safe and responsible destination through to the end of the study period by maintaining its promotion of COVID-19 health and safety protocols. The destination narrative and crisis management. The findings suggested that both destinations developed and changed the narrative during the pandemic, but they differed in how narratives aligned with the phases of the crisis management model. The narrative shared during the pre-pandemic phase did not align with the model, as neither destinations acknowledged the developing global crisis, despite their reliance on Italy and China, the early epicenters of the pandemic, as an important source market for visitors. Once the pandemic was declared, KTB began its messaging about the COVID-19 immediately. This may be due to the fact that Kenya had developed mitigation and preparedness strategies as early as February, as suggested by Aluga 2020. Additionally, the national government had taken steps to close the borders to any country experiencing the COVID-19 outbreaks within the days of the pandemic being announced. In contrast, TTB began its messaging related to the pandemic 2 weeks after the pandemic was declared, and the national government took fewer mitigation steps in those early days. The narrative created by KTB aligned with the 4 phases of the crisis management model, whereas the narrative created by TTB only aligned with the 2 phases of the crisis management model as indicated. Weeks and more of 2004 noted that it is not easy for a destination to develop some plans and strategies for crisis management. It is important for a destination, but this development of the plans and strategies is important for a destination as it provides them with the time and resources to respond to the impact of the crisis. Other literatures argued that the role played by DMOs to respond to the impact of a crisis are essential efforts made from the national government through the initiating of crisis management strategies, which are adapted by DMOs through narratives shared that maintain the destination's image and reputation. Furthermore, literature indicated that it is important to have the crisis management strategies in place to control the negative publicity about the destination during a crisis, which may have an effect on the destination image and reputation when recovering from a crisis. Thus, we can say that the emphasis of KTB on the narrative about the health and safety measures taken targeted the local and the visitors, fit within the mitigation and preparedness phase of the crisis management model, where this can be traced back in the early days of the pandemic, where Kenya's narrative was highly indicating that Kenya is a responsible destination. Literature also suggests that the mitigation and preparedness strategies are proactive steps taken to prevent or reduce the impact of a crisis. The importance of these narratives by KTB was evidenced by the frequency and number of posts that KTB made about the health and hygiene as compared to those focused on maintaining the awareness of Kenya's ability to offer the magical tourism experience. In contrast, TTB did not have any posts related to these phases of the crisis management model as we talk of the preparedness and the mitigation phase. KTB continued these strategies into the preparing for reopening and the reopening phase, which was mostly closely aligned with the response and the recovery stage of the crisis management model. TTB also shared narratives that addressed the pandemic with stages of the crisis management model. Both DMOs created narratives focused on staying home and traveling later during the response phase. However, Tanzania reopened tourism operations well before most countries were ready to reopen. These narratives quickly replaced TTB's position. Due to the time frame of this study and the prolonged nature of the COVID-19, as it is still ongoing, it is only possible to speak of the short-term recovery strategies within the crisis management model. During the recovery phase, TTB initially created a narrative that highlighted their safety protocol, but this soon gave away to return of the pre-pandemic messaging, which was focused on indicating that Tanzania is a modern, legitimate, well-developed player in the international stage, and they were proud of the products that they have and they offer to the potential tourists. However, KTB continued its health and hygiene messaging in addition to the pre-pandemic narrative. Thus, their social media posts reinforced their narrative of Kenya as a safe and responsible destination, in addition of being the place of magical experience, whereas Tanzania narrative largely ignored the potential impact of the COVID-19 on citizens and visitors and focused more on the economic contribution of tourism. Conclusion. Some literature acknowledged that the immediate action taken by African governments regarding the pandemic would provide a greater chance for recovery after the crisis. However, in this thesis or this research, we did not only review the difference in narratives that were shared by the two DMOs, but also highlighted the differences in approaches that were taken by the two DMOs. Shobwale 2021 suggested that Tanzania COVID denial may lead to the destruction of destination image and reputation with the potential visitors. Compounding this issue is that Kenya's promotion of health and hygiene focused narrative will increase the competitive advantage in this area, as previously Tanzania had a higher advantage over Kenya. Additionally, KTB's focus on safety may reduce the competitive advantage that Tanzania had prior to the pandemic. This would be problematic to TTB, as it was argued that by literature that the destination need to ensure that the post-pandemic narratives incorporate the messages of safety in addition to the tourism experiences offered in the hope of recovery. Tourism literature is very clear that destination narratives is the central to the promotion of its product, influencing consumer decisions and shaping the external reputation. Thus, it is important to use social media to create, share, and manage destination narratives that cannot be underestimated, as it is a promotional channel that allows the best interaction between hosts and potential visitors. It is clear that KTB has much higher use of social media than did the TTB, and this was much more focused in the creation of a stronger narrative. Recommendations. Based on the research presented, KTB has fully embraced the potential of social media in the creation, sharing, and management of destination image through the use of narratives. Unfortunately, it was also clear that TTB did not fully harness the potential of social media in tourism marketing, nor did they have actively tried to create a strong destination narrative. Therefore, I would recommend that TTB should invest in social media strategies in the creation of their narrative, but also have a general plan for crisis management and communication. And I will also recommend that Kenya should maintain the good work of presenting Kenya in the global forum, but also in advising and promoting people to keep safe during this ongoing pandemic. Limitations and future studies. This study was highly based on national DMO of Kenya and Tanzania, and ignored all other influencing factors on destination narratives. As for one to conclude to conclude or have one clear destination narrative, several factors have to be included. Things like consumers, which is the demand side, global views, and other factors. Therefore, we can say that destination narratives presented by KTB and TTB may differ significantly from the narrative that potential visitors believe about each country. This study focus starts of what is termed to be a prolonged global crisis that is still impacting travel and tourism, as WHO 2021 has noted that African continent is experiencing another wave of unchecked community transmission and limited progress in vaccination. Therefore, the post-pandemic destination narrative of Kenya and Tanzania are yet to be defined. In the future research piece, this research was conducted in a very limited time frame, as we had December 1st, 2019 to September 30th, 2020, within a prolonged crisis. So the work should be extended further to see how destination narrative developed and evolved with the use of multiple communication channels. These are my references, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm going to encourage you to unmute everyone. One of the things I find about Zoom is just the quietness of when we celebrate, we rather want to. So unmute and let's give a clap. And thank you so much.
Bravo, bravo, Patricia.
The World Leisure Centre of Excellence would like to thank the supervisory team and external examiner Jen Houpy Ferguson from Tourism Nanaimo for the contribution they made to Tricia's research. We would also like to thank the Queen Elizabeth Scholars Program. It is with programs such as this that we are able to attract incredible scholars from less economically developed countries to come and study in Canada. The World Leisure Centre of Excellence is committed to providing educational opportunities and doing incredible research. If you would like to learn more, please check out our Facebook page.